So he goes, okay, camera, hit, rolling, action. Man, what are you doing? It's very embarrassing. And at the end of the day, no, man, it's totally cool. This is the first time. It's all right. And I was like, okay. Oh my God, Tharusha, of all the questions you could have asked me. Everybody was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Hello everyone, my name is Tharusha and welcome to a brand new episode of the Aadmi podcast season 2, coming to you all the way from Sri Lanka. It's a fine Saturday evening here in Sri Lanka, sunny, and the weather is really nice. And today we are going to talk about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. And to talk about it, I have a good friend of mine joining the podcast today. He's an actor, he's a teacher, and most especially, he's a full-time theatre practitioner, Lihan Mendis. How's it going, brother?
It's going well, man. Thank you for having me.
No worries. How are you these days? How are things?
Things are good, Machang. Things are, it's a learning experience every day. You know, right now, for myself personally, I feel like I'm in quite a good headspace about things in comparison to how I was perhaps 2 years ago,
right?
When work kind of came to a standstill, but yeah, can't complain at all.
Tell me a little bit about yourself just to start things off.
Okay, my name is Lihan Mendis. I just turned 26. I've been working in the local theatre scene for ever since I left school, really. So it's been about 6+ years now, coming up on 7, really. You know, you can't really anticipate anything when you get involved in theatre, Machang, except that everything will go wrong. And in a lot of ways, things have gone wrong, you know.
That's the only guarantee you have, no?
That literally is the only guarantee. So all you can do is just adapt and move on.
Is there any particular instance or situation or any moment that you entered theatre or you changed from one thing to another? Is there any specific instance like that?
Okay, I have 3 people I can mention who have been the most influential people in my life in terms of like my career decisions and just the overall influence. Actually, it's now 4. But the first was the late Vinod Senadira, my teacher, who directed me first when I was about 16+. He didn't know my name, didn't know my name even after I was, the president of the drama club. But then this one time, a very, very poignant moment was Vinod had a really, really, really bad temper, right? And if something incensed him, he'd switch, right? And so we were working on this play called The Christmas Carol. So he was also the head of the choir at the time and the director at the school I studied at, which is St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia. There was an issue with, if I'm not mistaken, with the management, something like that. And he just said, no, I can't do this. And 2 weeks before 2.5 weeks before the show, he says, we're canceling it.
Wow.
And then he called me to his producer's office and he said, now Nishan, you have to sort this out. Okay, I'm trusting you to do it. And I said, okay, sir. And then by the end of the production, which I did act and direct, granted it was a brilliant production, but it was a very salient moment for me because, that to trust an entire production to an 18-year-old, right? Who, I mean, yes, I was madly, very almost religious about theater and, doing it properly as a student at the time. So I did do it and I think I did it as best as I could. But that was that was the moment when I realized, this is something I want to do for the rest of my life and maybe would consider doing it full time. Unfortunately, Vinod died of a heart attack in 2019. It was really, really a shocker. And, none of us who were quite close to him have really gotten over it. But thereafter, as I left school a couple of years later, actually, I started working with my guru, Tracy Holsinger, who has she's stunning, to say the least. Everything I am as an artist, as a disciplined theatre person is thanks to her. Every skill I have. Straight after that, I met Steve De La Silva. I think we'll be chatting about him a little later also, but in a nutshell, Steve is the most incredible person I have ever met. The most incredible director I have worked with. a very significant moment for me in my life, which happened, which was that we were rehearsing in 2 different cities, right? We were rehearsing by ourselves, the 3 actors in Colombo, and we were also rehearsing in Puttalam, but staging the play in Colombo. And the listener stroke viewership might not know that Puttalam is about 160 kilometers away from Colombo, and that travel is a little difficult. And producing a show between cities was also quite tough. But once we came to Colombo, there were a hell of a lot of things that we had to sort out. There was a lot of pressure on me at the time to kind of get it sorted out. And Steve recognized that, and I remember receiving this text. Now the show was on Friday, and I had many sleepless nights until that Tuesday of the very same week. And I remember Steve texting me, I think it was at about 11:56, and said, "Lihan, as I promised you, now all you need to do is act, give everything over to me, I will do it."
Wow.
And what that did for me, and I can't really comprehend how someone can read someone else that well, released me from everything that I had to do at the time and all the pressure, and more than anything else, just ease the pressure. Right? I didn't hand over everything to him, obviously, but I gave him a significant amount of work, and he handed it over to his team. But, understanding the language of relationship, right, is something Steve does incredibly well. He's so good with everyone he meets, and he's just an incredible director, as I said. I will work with him in this lifetime and in every single other lifetime to come. And, he is a dear friend. Now I'm also working very closely with Ruanti Dichikera, she runs a theatre company called the Stages Theatre Group. And we've been working quite closely on a couple of very, very exciting projects right now, and stunning artist and just human being in general. Her empathy, her everything about Ruanti is just stunning. So we don't really have an industry for the English theatre once I moved out of school. I mean, there are theatre companies like Minded Ventures and Stages Theatre Group, and I'm not saying that those are the only 2. There are other theatre companies like Floating Spaces and Janakarelio, for instance, who are really trying to support the artists that the co-artists and so on, right? But there is I only found out later that there is no structural support from the government. There is no structural support even through NGOs and things like that. So it is very difficult, Matsang. It's very difficult to stage plays here. I mean, a director plays the role of producer, designer, social media manager, and has to learn everything. Because I work with all told me, it just keeps getting difficult as you get older. I suppose to a degree you get a little disillusioned about things, and the thrill dissipates a little.
Yeah.
But it's a difficult thing to answer, Machan, because it's something I'm very passionate about, right? I would say that if I was, in any other industry that I wasn't so hot about, I would have had to cope in that sense of like struggle to survive. But I don't, because of my privilege as well. I don't. There are some certain tough decisions that you have to make, but in any case, Machang, I know you would, with the theatre companies you work with, you will, by hook or by crook, make it happen.
When it comes to a public performance where the reception might be very mixed, reception might be very diversified, how do you prepare yourself, and how do you really advance that preparation levels when it comes to, public acting?
I think, Matsang, a lot of it all depends on the nature of the play itself and the director who you're working with, because a lot of plays that do happen in schools, at least in my time, were, we worked on published plays, right? So it's literally reading, blocking, rehearsal, staging.
Yeah.
Right? That is the form, right? That's that is the source, right? Those are the steps to it. Building a relationship with my body was the thing that took the longest time, and it's something that you keep working on as well. And I think within the group that is staging the play, right, I have always found support. I have always worked very fortunately with directors who have really taken care of their actors, right? It has been convenient for me, to say the least, to have worked with I have been very lucky to have worked with the directors that I have worked with. But it's difficult to answer that question, Machang, and say, okay, this is what it is, because everything is a mixed bag, right? You're given a bunch of actors to work with who you've never worked with before, a director to work with, you don't know what their style is, but ultimately it's just like, okay, here, this is the time we have, this is what you have to do, try and tell the story. That's kind of the way I approach it. I am yet to learn, and I do think that once I have those things in place, it will be more interesting. But we also need to recognize much of the fact that when it comes to school plays, right, things are all obviously measured at that standard, right?
Yeah.
And right now it's a very interesting thing because within the last 2 years, I believe there have only been like 4 English theatre plays. It might even be 3 years, only 4. Yeah, about 3 years where only 4 English theatre plays have been staged in Colombo.
Yeah,
I could be wrong on that number, and I'm talking outside of schools. Okay. And what that means is that you have a society of, theatre goers who are literally starved of theatre, right? So you have people who are coming into the theatre for the very first time, and they are in their early 20s, So as an actor, like I said, we can't even, except for giving an audience their money's worth in some way or form, right? Focusing on reception and anticipating audience responses and, okay, like, in Sri Lanka, for a bit of context for the viewership and the listenership, right? One of the most critical theaters, right, to stage plays, to perform in, is the Vala in Peradeniya, right? These are theatre folk and, audience members who know what good theatre is, right? And they will boo you off the stage if you are not good and you are not there. Yeah. But to speak on English theatre in Colombo at present, right, we have an older audience who is referring back to, good plays, not so good plays, whatever, from 5 to 6 to 7 to some even 15 years ago. Some even referring to plays, done by Steve in the late 80s as being good. So really at this point, it's like, I literally, there is nothing that we can do as directors and actors and producers other than just stage the damn thing. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, then there's something that we have to learn from. But the fact that theatre has not been happening much makes it all the more difficult. Experience is the best teacher at the end of the day, and we haven't had the opportunity to do. In the last 2 years, I have acted in 1 play. Whereas in 2017, I was involved in 7 plays in 1 year.
Skipping a few years ahead, who were in V-Day, presented by Grassrooted Trust, creating awareness on plethora of topics, and very, very timely topics indeed. And I think you had the chance of starring alongside a very stellar cast who were very, very experienced in what they were doing. What was that experience? How did you, if I may say, blend in?
So working with Hans is always fun.
Right.
This is Hans Billy Moria, who is the head of the Grassrooted Trust. And I
You
think
worked kind of school, have you?
Yes, I did. I met him originally in school. He ran a program called Sound Mind, Sound Body, which was essentially to bring these boys into a bit more, I would give them a bit more balanced structure, especially in terms of their views of, the opposite gender, and to understand themselves and so on, right? Well-being, long and short. It's different, Matan, because they're shorter plays, right? And everything is woven through with music.
Right.
Hans chooses an artist. It was Al Jarreau in 1 year, the Queen in another, the Beatles in another, and we're just moving from play to play to play to play to play. So you have to be ready. You're working alongside, actors who are not very good. Who are not only really, really good, but also, very passionate about the issues that are being spoken about, right? And these are all issues that were relevant to Sri Lanka at the time, and were a reflection of Colombo and all the other, atrocities that were happening around Sri Lanka in relation to women and children as well. So from an actor's point of view, working with Hans, he's a very disciplined, intense director in that he will direct over your shoulder almost, and be giving you notes into your ear, right? We'll direct the body a little more.
While acting, he gives notes?
While, in rehearsal. So while you're taking the lines, you have the script in front of you, he'll come and just give you a note there, right? And then slowly that develops into a very intense piece, right? Because the director has been really part of every step of it. It has been alongside you every step of the way. I did play very minor roles in all three performances. Well, actually, no. The second one I did a solo piece, but it was a little more experimental. But it's lovely. It's a treat to work, because I mean, as social observers, Matang, like, you get to see, actors like Dominic Keller, Gehan Block, Anuruddha Fernando, Chitranga Karyavasam, all of the Sashini Vakpel, who's unfortunately abroad, right? These actors are incredible, right? They're unbelievable, and the amount of work that they put in to these scenes, which are just 8 minutes long, you learn so much.
Gruesome Playground Injuries, if I'm not mistaken, was your first time directing a public show?
Yeah, it was.
Right. How was that experience? And to be very blunt with you, it was received, and to be blunt with our viewers also, it was received very well.
So Gruesome Playground Injuries is a really play written by, it's one of my favorite plays, written by this writer called Rajiv Joseph, who a lot of people thought, because his name is Rajiv Joseph, was a Tamil writer from here, but he's not. He's a Canadian playwright, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Right? And is a Pulitzer-winning writer as well. And it's essentially a play which takes place over 30 years.
Right.
And each scene, but it doesn't happen chronologically. But these two characters, Kayleen and Doug, meeting each other they meet each other after one of them having suffered a very serious injury. And most often than not, the physical injuries are Doug's. So the external injuries rather are Doug's. The internal injuries, literally and metaphorically in terms of like emotional trauma, are Kayleen's, right? And it's essentially how these two people just unfortunately cannot be together. It's always been right person, wrong time, right? So this was a play that I was able to do with a friend of mine, Shanaka Kumarasinghe, and his company called the Broken Leg Theatre Company. And I met Shanaka in 2018, and I remember him telling me, Matan, shall we do a play? And I said, okay. He said, send me something to read. So I sent him this play, and he said, okay, super, you'll direct. And I said, what? Do you want me to direct you? Because Shanaka is, quite an established actor here. He just, in fact, was in Edinburgh with a theatre company doing a play called Counting and Cracking. And I said, yeah, I mean, sure, if you are okay with it, of course, I'd love to direct you. And we auditioned for the role of Kayleen. I got to work with the absolutely incredible Imani Pereira. She's, in my view, she's like the best actor I've ever worked with to date. To date, as a director, like the most directable actor I have worked. And the experience was I mean, like anything that involves like any two-hander, which requires a lot of intimacy, right? And it's essentially a trinity, right? It is the director, then these two actors working together quite closely. It becomes difficult in certain moments, tempers run high. And I was also producing that show. We staged the play, unfortunately, alongside the workshop players production of The Greatest Shows, right, which was a massive musical theatre concert. So we had a very intimate audience and a small audience with the play. I think in total we may have had about 300 people in total who came to watch it. No, that's not right. Maybe about 350 to 400 people maximum.
In total,
who came to watch it. In total, because the Punchi theatre, right? Punchi again, to the listenership, means small, right? So it was quite lovely to work with these two. I mean, they're both the same age. At the time, they were 38, right? And I had just turned 22. And to be quite honest, I didn't know a lot that I was doing. Everything was what I had read in books and seen other people do. But I realized after doing that production that this was something that I can do. So it was a great one, fun one to do for sure.
Let's say when you got a role, the script and all that, how do you prepare for it? I'll give you some context. Some people try to find themselves in the role, and some people try to find an inspiration to play that particular role. What is your thought process? What is your approach? We know there are people like Daniel Day-Lewis who go like on retreats and be reclusive, do their research for months and return as a completely different person, and for him to like get rid of it also takes some time. It's an interesting concept, but I wanted to know what is your approach? How do you step into it?
So in summary, understanding, conviction, truth, and preparation. So that's basically how I do it. Yeah.
Someone says that a portion of you should be there in the character that you play, or do you believe that you should completely lose yourself?
I think a better balance of things would be, yes, you do not necessarily see Lihan's tendencies and maybe you don't even hear Lihan's voice. Maybe you don't see his mannerisms. But the actor must always remember that, look, you have to trust the body's interpretation of everything. And the mind is part of the body. And in that sense, to be this thing of like, okay, the body is, Lihan is supposed to be less and I must diminish everything that is there and let none of me, exist in a performance is an exercise in vanity more than anything else. I am of the belief that no, you must work in harmony with your own experience.
I haven't briefed you about this, but I just thought about it, so let's give it a shot.
Sure.
Okay, so this is called This or That. I'll tell you two things. Just pick your preference: plays or books.
Okay, are we talking about theatre? Plays or books on theatre?
Anything, man. No context.
Then books.
Right. Okay. Acting or directing?
Acting.
Punchi or the vent?
Tharusha, this is so difficult. Oh my God. Okay, I hate to do this because I love the punchi, but the vent. Yeah.
The vent. Okay. Exploring the ocean or exploring the space?
Exploring the ocean or exploring space? Exploring the ocean. Yeah.
Tragedy or comedy?
I hate to say it, but tragedy. Better to be just a serious actor, in my opinion, like a character actor.
Right. Okay. That's the end of that. Hope that.
Oh my God, Tharusha, of all the questions you could have asked me.
Machan, your transition from stage to screen was a pretty big one, as you had the chance to star in ITV's The Good Karma Hospital. Walk me through the experience. How different was it to act in front of a camera in a big production instead of being in front of a live audience?
Okay. It was one of the most amazing experiences I've had because that was when I just had to act. I had someone, I didn't want them, but I had someone who was getting me my water. I had my own room. I had all of these things. And I was like, my God, there is this thing.
Finally, it's come
money. We are paid money to act. That happens. So he goes, okay, camera, hit, rolling, action. And I'm waiting because I for whatever reason, I didn't hear him say it.
Okay.
So then we had to stop it and take the scene 4 times.
Oh my.
And yeah, that was very embarrassing. And at the end of the day, I had to go and like apologize to everybody. I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to mess it up. And they're like, no, man, it's totally cool. This is the first time. It's all right. And I was like, okay.
Machan, if we can go back to where, if I could say, when Sri Lanka paused for a bit in 2009, the pandemic with COVID. It was tough for everyone, and then during COVID it was tough, and then when one outbreak after the other, one curfew after the other, that was not a period that we genuinely enjoyed. And for you especially, you had to engage in a different profession as well, just to put everything together while doing what you do as well. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So we originally had the Easter attacks in 2019, which put everything at a standstill, right? The internal conflict that we had. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, I think, we were working on, that is at Mind Adventures, Tracy and I were working on, a big production that we had already done called Maya in 2019. After the Easter attacks, actually, between the Easter attacks and the pandemic, which we were then going to hopefully take internationally, take it nationwide for sure. Everything came to a standstill. And then we applied for, I think, 6 or 7 projects. None of them came through. I started a podcast called Theatre in the Apocalypse, which is available on YouTube still, where we spoke to theatre practitioners all over the world in Sri Lanka and just wondered how on earth do we, bat on.
Yeah.
And because theatre hasn't fully recovered. When things ended with Mind Adventures in 2020 in December, right, I did actually opt out of a career altogether and I had no job at the time. But I chose to continue work as a freelancer, and that's when I took on the producing acting gig with art shifting into teaching, which is now my full-time job, was essentially what I do at Gateway is I prep a lot of students for acting exams for the LAMDA, that is the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. They are grade 6, 7 and 8 acting exams. It's an examination board which has been around for a long time. And at the A-level students, I prepare them for Trinity exams. And it was a very smooth transition into something, because I was anyway working with students on their acting exams previously. So while that has been very rewarding, but at the end of the day, even that, the job which actually has made me more secure, which is this teaching job that I had, as soon as I joined, we went into another 6 months of lockdown with the second outbreak of COVID. And it was during this time that I realized, oh gosh, now I don't have a lot of, I don't have we have these things, but I don't have other projects that I can help to make, certain ends meet. I had just, bought myself a motorbike. I had to pay off the lease and things like that. And, we had a bit of time on our hands. So me and my 2 roommates, we were like, okay, let's get on to PickMe, which is the Sri Lankan Uber. Yeah, the Sri Lankan Uber. And we did, door-to-door deliveries of like groceries. I had ice cream. I had all sorts of odd packages. I remember, picking up this one package and that guy was like, don't open it. Okay. And then dropped it off somewhere else, And again, it was tough, but it was essentially also what we needed to do, get around a little, because when you had that pass, you were able to travel a little more freely. And mentally, I think we've kind of forgotten about how excruciating that period was, not being able to meet people physically. What a time. Right now, with the economic situation that our country is in, this seems to, we have this collective, I suppose, amnesia, where we forget how, socially fragmented it is that we have become. And I think that is because we are very resilient as a people and we are adaptive and all of those things, for sure. The transition, I am very fortunate, Tharusha, to tell you that it was easy. I wouldn't say that, if you told me at 19 or 20 that at 26 I would be a full-time teacher and, talking to you about how our country is in a crisis and, I've had to adapt, compromise and do those kinds of things, I would have been very, very upset. But what can we do except look to the future? What can we do except for, as, Kipling said, just hold on, what else can we do? But, everything for me, Machang, right now is just education, right? Literally, it is education. It's been a learning curve for me. The kids I know, it's been a learning curve for them. Education, as I said, is still the final frontier of theatre being sustainable in Sri Lanka, right? We can only do it through schools. Just have to keep going, keep hustling.
Sri Lanka is probably going through the worst economic crisis at present, and everyone. It's a well-known secret internationally as well. How do you think that singularly theatre has been impacted by this crisis?
When you're buying a ticket, right, that is a theatre ticket, on the list of household priorities will be right at the end.
Yeah, probably not even
above maybe like a treat for your dog or something, right? That might be where it is, right? To say, Machang, that it hasn't been impacted is, Machang, like, first of all, people can't afford food. How on earth are they going to afford a ticket to the theater? And similarly, production costs have almost tripled, because gigs are low. So they have to adjust their costs in such a way that they make sure that they get, okay, for instance, hiring a projector for a day used to be 8,000 rupees. Now it is 20,000. Well, and we can't really increase the price of the tickets and so on. It's crazy. So, that's just an example, but how, we have to strategize now is that, every play that you do has to be, and I've been telling everyone I meet, right? Please schedule it for the first week of the month, right? Within the first 3 to 4 days, because people will have at least a little bit of cash in hand, right? Yeah. To buy the tickets for the show. You have, we can't pay venues commission rates anymore, because even that 5% is a lot of money. So pre-booking, doing those things in advance are really the secret, because like I said, it's not like anything has changed in terms of the public allocation of money towards, or rather the government's expenditure towards theatre. There are no grants in place. There's no security in place for all of these artists, really. It is still primarily crowdfunded and funded through sponsorship, but that too based on who you know. Right? I can't randomly walk up to someone and say, some corporate and say, okay, look, this play is in your interest. That doesn't work anymore.
Right. We are at the end of the discussion, right at the conclusion of the discussion. Right before we wrap up, I am going to tell you a few names and words. This is also, I didn't prep you for this, but just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind and explain this thing in one word. Okay. You can't exceed one word. Only one word, Macha. Let's see. Take your time. This is a bit of a tough one. Right.
Tell to see.
Tell to see. Okay. Theater.
Purpose.
Books.
Liberation.
Vinod Senadi.
Hilarious.
Steve De La Silva.
Role model.
Tracy Hausinger.
Sensei.
Ruanti Dichikera.
Astounding.
Chanaka Amrasinghe.
Friend.
Delon Veerasinghe.
Best friend.
Maya.
Intense.
School.
Useless.
Love.
Precious.
You got a bit of a horn also after that.
That's extra validation.
Validation by a bus driver.
Yeah.
Life.
A trip.
Right. Thank you so much, Lihan, for accepting my invitation and on the
My pleasure, Tharusha. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being a part of the Aadmi podcast series, and thank you for talking about a very special topic for a little bunch of people that often is put under the radar. And it is important to create awareness about these things and how important to that little bunch of this topic is to that little bunch of people. It is no secret that Sri Lanka is going through a tough time, and we need motivation, we need inspiration, and through stories like Lihan's, that is the motivation and the inspiration that we are looking for to keep our head high and face our challenges head on. We have nothing but equally interesting and exciting stories to tell in the coming few weeks as well. Stay connected with the Aadmi podcast series and see you next week with another common person in the Sri Lankan society. Until then, tata bye. I'm Tharusha. I'll see you soon.